Hi, my name is Dejan and I'm a failure enthusiast. I believe that failures are just part of the success and not the end. Together with my team, I'm bringing to you the failure talks and maybe new ideas on how to leverage a setback for a successful comeback. Welcome everyone, these are the Failure Talks. My name is Dejan, I'm the Failure Enthusiast, and I'm so happy to have Mr. Martin Giesswein today here with me. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks for having me.
For those who do not know that, I've been already working with you and talking with you about the fuck up we're going to talk about today, and it's going to be like, hold your breath. A story about maybe the biggest business fuck up in the professional world, namely Nokia Phones. We all know that. I had my phone back then. I think it was even my first phone. So again, thank you so much for having this conversation with us here and also spreading the word, talking about the fuck up, but also the learnings that you gained from this huge fuck up again. Martin, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to have the opportunity.
So before we start and deep dive into more about the Nokia fuck up, actually, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What do you do right now? What is your profession? And how do you live with all the experiences that you've gained with Nokia before?
So my career is actually in two phases. One is, of course, the corporate world that we talk about later. And since 2014, I'm a digital entrepreneur. I'm a little bit investing in startups. I'm one of the founders of Talent Garden. I'm having a lot of associates that are working with me in a network, and we're concentrating on digital innovation and leadership. And 50% of my time I'm spending on lecturing, on training, because all of the things that I learned and the solutions that we are gaining out of that, I want to broadcast it. So it's great to be here. It's another opportunity. It's my mission that all of those failures are not repeated by other companies and other managers.
I'm very curious now to go and just jump into the topic. I mean, it's about Nokia, the Nokia Failed from the phone perspective, right? However, let's start with that first. How did you even end up to work for Nokia?
We have to think back, it was 2004 and the main media was phone calls and SMS. So it was before the smartphone time. So I applied on a website for Nokia. I was in an IT company before that. And they sent me an SMS back after 1 week and said, we might have a job for you. And then it started. And I started as a sales guy for the enterprise business for Nokia Phones in Switzerland and in Austria. And 2004, I mean, this was 3 years before the iPhone. We had over 60% of market share. Everybody knew us. It was the greatest time and the greatest company to work with.
I mean, Nokia was maybe one of my first phones that I ever had. And even before Nokia jumped into the phone business, right, and becoming a market leader, you've been also a market leader in other businesses, right? And I think even the beginning of Nokia was that you produced boots.
Nokia was one of those companies that really said there is a gene, a DNA that we can transform. So they started in the 19th century as a mill in Finland, right? And as you said, they transformed over businesses, over industries, and they reinvented themselves. They became market leader in the GSM area, in the old telecom industry. And when you have a company that is so transformable, I think it's noticeable that because of digitalization and digital business models, they broke down. So this was too high of a jump, even for a very transformative company.
Sounds very interesting. So you started in 2004, you said, right? And what was your job? What was your job description back then? And the challenges maybe you faced back then?
So I was responsible for bringing up the enterprise business, so the companies buying phones, so to say, from Nokia. And we did so well. The money was not the issue, right? We had turnovers, we had revenues, we had profit. We had a market capitalization of 65 billion US dollars, and we had in the phones business over 50,000 employees worldwide. And it was so easy. You took a cup of coffee with a procurement guy from the telecom, and you went home with a 10 million order. So it was easy. So you stopped at 10 o'clock because the week was done.
Wow.
And it was not sales, right? I was sales then. Back then it was like even contributing phones capacities to certain providers, telecom providers. And it was a crazy time, and it was even before the compliance rules, right? So we had a lot of parties, we had customer engagement, we had a lot of festivals. So money was not the issue, and we felt like heroes. We felt like it would never ever be different than that. It will go on forever. We will be the kings. So we had a very arrogant status back then.
But then you said like before, 3 years later, iPhone and Apple entered the market, right? Of course, you already had some competitors even before Apple entered the market. But what happened with Apple? What happened with iPhone, and why did suddenly iPhone, change the landscape?
This is what you can see in a lot of industries. We had competitors, but they have been inside industry competitors. For example, Ericsson or Siemens back then, even with phones, with feature phone, non-smartphones. And the competitor like Apple and later also Google with their ecosystems, they came from outside of the industry. We did not see them coming. And we were laughing at them because we felt that we had the better hardware. The first iPhone didn't do text messages, for example, and the battery was bad and it broke easily when it fell down. So we were like laughing at them coming with such a product into our industry, and we did not realize that it was not only on this level of hardware, it was on a deeper level, on a level of digital business model. Hindsight, we know that, but way back then we were laughing at it and we said, no problem for us, that's fine, it's a nice joke.
They came into the market, they entered the market with the touchscreen. Did you put your focus too much on the touchscreen rather than like just screening the competitor in general?
The funny thing about the touchscreen is that a few years earlier, Finnish engineers proposed having touchscreen phones from Nokia to the CEO. And the CEO, a Finnish guy, very successful, very self-confident, with his Finnish English accent, he said, "We don't need touch. Customers want buttons." So he said, I know what the customer wants, and he doesn't want to have touchscreen. He wants to have phones with buttons. And therefore, this was decided. And this is one of those points where a company breaks.
So you stick with this strategy. We're going to continue. We know better than everybody else. But I mean, it was so fast. I remember iPhone just became an overnight success, kind of. So how did you react on that?
It took us very long to realize. So when you say it came into the market 2007 and then Google and Android systems 2008, then even in 2012, for example, you can still find an article where I, as a country manager for Austria, said that the magic of Apple is now broken and Nokia is the real innovative company. There you can see that we were like blindfolded or brainwashed. So I believed my own talking as a manager, and I reported in a way that my managers also liked what I said. So we were really blind and we were really brainwashed. And the funny thing is, while Nokia was going down and we did not really change our way, we still went on in this old hardware industry, in this B2B industry. During that time, I made my best career. So I became general manager and later marketing director for the whole region CE from Turkey to Israel. So this is a paradox in my life where I could be successful within a company that from outside declined, totally declined. And so this is one of my learnings. I mean, you do the pep talk internally and you don't realize and you don't want to realize what happened in the market. We actually were not allowed and we don't wanted to have an iPhone just to test it. And we didn't talk to customers. And one of the points is we stick in this B2B business. So I had a coffee with a purchase guy of the telecom provider and then my deal was done. But I shipped 10,000 phones, but I knew zero about the end customer.
What I don't understand is right now, so still, iPhone is growing, the numbers are growing. You're maybe at one point steady, but then you also declined. You know, actually it collapsed very fast. And there's the one thing between talking internally and selling still to the stakeholders and the management. But on the other hand, there are the numbers, the market, that proves you maybe wrong or shows you like, hey, whatever you say, the numbers are saying something different. How did you match these two things?
We were a follower then. When we realized that Apple was applying a platform business with the platform, for example, of iTunes, having this direct contact to the end customer, having a B2B2C business where with a digital handshake, they knew everything about the customer. When we realized it, we said, oh, we're going to have another platform. And it was called Ovi back then.
Okay.
You can forget it again. It never was a success. I think I was head of Ovi or something like this, OVE. Okay. And we tried to catch up. But when you don't have the user experience, the closeness to the market, and you're a follower, then even the developers that do that app, the apps, didn't want to go onto your platform. They wanted to be on the Google Play Store and on the iTunes or App Store. And I can remember 2007, I paid developers 10,000 euros for one app to also program it for our system and our platform.
So whatever you could find on the iTunes and the App Store and what is the other one? I'm an Apple fanboy. Google Play, yeah. So you pay these developers to copy it just for your own system.
And there you see, even back then, we played the game wrongly because platform business is wonderful because as a platform holder, somebody else has the risk and the cost to put content, applications or music or movies or whatever onto your platform, and you only have to sell them on a high scale, having millions of iPhones out there, right? So this platform business is wonderful because you have all the data, you can do all the rules, what content is allowed, what not, and you make a share of 30% with every transaction without having the risks. And we did not understand it because we said, okay, so we have to generate content and we have to push people in because they don't want it to be there. So even in the following, we did not understand how this digital economy works, push-pull 180 degrees, and it was not a success, obviously. There came a change into the Windows world back then. Even that did not take up, so we never had this app equality with the other platforms. And there you saw the others rising, and ours going steadily down. And we were just changing our forecast. I still remember when I reported a 7 million loss in my forecast. I could not sleep, and I reported it on the next day in the morning, and I argued it, and everybody was, it's going down. And we have to fire people. I mean, it's one thing that you're not reacting to the market, but then you have to give notice to people. I had to close down, for example, the Vienna office as a CEE hub and move it to Budapest, and a lot of people could not go there. And that's the reason that is why this pain that I felt as a manager. I don't want other managers to feel the same pain. I don't want to make them the same mistakes, like from being arrogant, thinking they will go on, innovating only from inside, or ignoring platform or other business models. This is the new business, and we have to know it. Actually, it's not taught on a lot of universities. So that's the reason why we have to talk about it. What are the patterns of digital economy? And
I'm so happy to have you here, being like the first-hand experienced person sharing this knowledge with us. So let me just stick a little bit with Nokia. So yeah, you've been a B2B business, and the competitor started like the B2C or even B2B2C, right?
Yes.
So because now they're even selling directly to the consumers, right? And then you said like there was this platform or ecosystem thinking, right? They understood the game, right? They understood like we have to provide them content. They will stay on our platform. We can track what they do, right? We can learn from them. We can increase the experience, the user experience, and even like, how do you call that? And you keep them like, you make them to a long-term customer.
Exactly.
And you had this thought, okay, we have the hardware. Now let's give money to the developers. Just to copy the apps, and we just want to sell the apps, or like having 30% revenue share, but not thinking behind how are they using the app, when do they log in, when do they log out, etc. So just understanding the consumer better. And that was like one of the main reasons why Nokia collapsed in the end, right?
Exactly, just as you said, Dejan. So we were thinking we were in the old telecom industry, shipping phones to telecom providers. But actually we have been now in the internet and communication business. It is a new branch that was developed 2007 onwards. And ecosystem is the word. Like, look at Apple and Google. They are surrounding the customer with hardware and services. You have the iPhone, the iPad, the iPod, the Mac. You have the iCloud, you have the mail, you have the TV, you have the music, you have the podcast. So I'm surrounded by them. So they are building up an ecosystem of services and products. And therefore it is so hard to change that ecosystem. So you don't want to go out. It's costly, it's painful, it takes a lot of time. Let's stay in the ecosystem. And us throwing phones at the customers is totally different business to building an ecosystem where you are like locked in. And Google does more or less the same. And everybody now thinking about solving complex user demands is thinking ecosystem. Also in mobility, for example, let's touch it maybe later, but nobody can give a solution to the demand of modern mobility to a customer. Not planes, not trains, not car manufacturers, right? They have to work together on ecosystems. Apple is cool because they are dominant on their ecosystem, and they even go into other industries. Just like they did with the telecom industry, they are now going, for example, also in the finance industry. Apple Pay.
Exactly.
Apple Pay means that in the finance ecosystem that is ruled by the bank, they go in and they have the customer intimacy when you pay with your iPhone via Apple Pay.
And what you pay, I guess.
And what you pay. They have, again, all the data. It's like you have a shop, but somebody else is sitting at your cashier and know all the customers. And you say, what is going on here?
Yeah, I'm just making money, but I know where and why and when. And now they like control all the knowledge.
And I was talking to a bank CEO when he introduced Apple Pay as something modern and cool. And I said, look here, in Nokia, we let the customer intimacy and the data to somebody else. And we failed. Let's talk about it so you don't make the same mistake. And he said, thanks for the discussion. He was very strong on this thinking. And he gave me a new thought. He said, Martin, you're right. Strategically, it was wrong to push Apple Pay in our bank ecosystem. But I tactically had to do it to be the modern bank. Still, I'm having my other systems and I'm trying to push them down. And this is this hybrid working. Have your own platforms, have your own customer intimacy. And if you have to let them in. I mean, also my book, I'm selling it over Amazon, right? You have to use those systems to your own benefit, but always keep your own freedom to have your own platforms, your own experiences, and your own customer data.
What I'm so much interested in, I mean, these are the failure talks, and I would love to speak about the reasons why Nokia failed in the end. So we know, I mean, there are some reasons, the ecosystem, the platforms, but it's too technical to me. I mean, you, at the beginning you said you've been laughing at the others, you've been the market leader, you didn't see these things coming, or you just ignored them coming. So, and you said you're also writing the book. I remember when we had the last chat, you said there will be also in this book several reasons, several fuck-ups of Nokia and why we created these fuck-ups. So could you name maybe 3 to 4 reasons, the core reasons why Nokia in the end failed?
So we touched those technical ones like the platform thinking, the ecosystem thinking, the new industry patterns, the digital business models. So that's fine. On the mindset level of the management, it was this arrogancy because of a long-term success. 15 years of market leadership leads to the position where you believe it will go linear onwards. And in our economy today, this is untrue. The market is not linear anymore. It was in the 80s and 90s maybe, but it's not anymore. So this was this arrogancy of success where a management decided to go the same route and not reinventing the business itself. So this was the biggest mistake. And as I said, being blindfolded, being arrogant, being foolish, and not being the disruptor yourself.
It's so interesting because it was a winning company for years and maybe generations, right? Because it started with the mill and the boots, and you said at the beginning of this interview also you had it in the DNA, right? So it's so interesting that even like a winning company suddenly can like be hit and punch into the face and then collapse. I know a lot of companies today who are successful, very successful actually. But we just want to tell them also like be careful, right? Just try to think about Nokia. They've been reinventing for many years. It's not only a company that is good in one industry and they stay like in this industry forever and then they collapse. Because Nokia is even a better example how fuck-ups can happen of a company that reinvented itself several times and still was hit by the market, the speed of the market, the agility and the user behavior that we didn't expect when the digital world kind of moved into our lives.
And there's one specific reason for that. You can develop yourself in the 80s and 90s and you can transform with inside-out innovation. So we had enough knowledge and we had people in the R&D having new products, new services. So that was okay by that time. So for example, the success of companies was measured by how many percentage of the turnover they put into internal research and development. And Nokia was just like that. So a Finnish engineer was deciding on the next product. And we were all happy with that because it went good so far. But innovation patterns with the customer in the digital world changed. Successful companies solved that problem by having, of course, internal innovation because they know a lot and they have resources, but mixing that with external inputs. Brutal collaboration with the customers, making prototypes, let them test it, make minimal viable products, have design thinking, understanding the customer journey. That's the way today innovation is done. Having collaboration with startups, buying companies. So that is the new game. So when you have been a successful transforming company in the past, if you want to do that now, you have to find the right mix of innovation. The problem with a lot of companies that I'm working with is that innovation is not incentivized. How are you incentivized in a company as a manager? You are incentivized on holding your forecast and having those plus 5% on the cash cows of today in the next quarter. Why should you invest into the revenue of the next 3 years? So we have to work on the incentive schemes to make this innovation possible and to make it possible that it is part of the game. So we have two businesses in all of the companies that I'm working with. We have the stable business that is paying our salaries now, it's performance. And then we have the second part, which is the revenue of the next 3 years, which is innovation. And is it via entrepreneurship, startup collaboration, intraps, corporate startups, you name it, there are different forms. But you have to have both now in this company. And back then we didn't have that. Right. Now we know it. And the companies are doing that successfully.
Some, because there are a lot of still struggling. But what I love to do when it comes to innovation, I love to, when I work with corporates, to also just remind them, innovation is like the result of an experiment. So you have to experiment a lot actually, and if it's an experiment, you don't know ahead of the time if it's going to work out or not. So you also have, as the management, give to the innovative people and the staff that you have the freedom to experiment, the freedom also to fail, but also the freedom then to succeed, right? And I think this is also a crucial part when it comes to innovation. How can we measure that actually? That could be a question. So sometimes we have a lot of targets and goals, personal goals we want to achieve during the year in a business. You know, we could work in share your 2 or 3 experiments that you've
Exactly.
worked on and even failed, because we need this knowledge. We want to have this knowledge, we want to share this knowledge, even if you failed internally, because somebody else could be inspired by that. But let's move on with the next 2 reasons why actually Nokia failed.
So just summing up, we had the platform, we had the ecosystem thinking, the lack of thinking in those new digital models. We have, thirdly, this arrogancy of success, which is a management failure, a mindset failure. And we have been talking about outside-in innovation, which is the new paradigm. And the 5th one that we can identify from the Nokia Phones business, and I'm inside, I'm part of the problem. I was part of the problem, so I'm turning myself into helping other companies in my companies with solving those issues. The 5th one is that we have this ignorance for data, just like we touched it before, not knowing what happens in the market. Just to add to our discussion beforehand, I was paying a lot of money to agencies giving me so-called sellout data. So they estimated how many of my phones have been sold out at the retail. Okay. So I knew when I had to go back to the purchase department to sell another bulk in. So this ignorance of data. And the great thing is when I was working now with insurance companies in Germany for 3.5 years, and we changed the whole mindset of the management of the top 250 guys. At the beginning they said, oh, don't tell us that insurance will change. And I said, I'm not telling you that insurance is changing, I'm just seeing what happened with Nokia. I'm seeing what happened with banks and challenger banks coming into that area.
The automotive industry
industry, music industry before that.
Yeah. Why should it be different than for the
movies, broadcasting systems, everything? So why should it stop with insurance? And they said, because we're already here for 100 years. Oh, I said, okay, this is Nokia mistake.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
So the solution is to work more with data, to analyze them, and not ignore them just because you think you know it. The numbers are telling you actually, and can lead you.
That's right, yeah. And you have to think differently about data. The insurance company said we are an insurance company. Over those 3.5 years, we worked with them and they said, you're not in the insurance business, you're in the business of trust and data. And that they understood it then, yes? And they even made a project where they are now lowering their revenues simply to gain data from their customers. So they are doing that. Data, getting own data from your own customers means not that you just sell the data for advertising like Google does. No, you use it for your internal optimization of your products and services, processes, gaining new customer segments and new routes to the customer in the market. You have to have your own data. I have to know what the people are doing with my products and what they need most to optimize. This is like really the gas for our engine today.
To optimize and also to increase the satisfaction of the services and the products. Because it should be also like user-centric, consumer-centric. Thank you so much, Martin. You mentioned before that you're writing a book. I said it's going to be partly about Nokia, but it's also about way more, right? What is the content of the book?
The content and the aim of the book is to have within one book the update of our business administration know-how that we all have as managers and entrepreneurs. This update that what happened in the last 20 years. Proven by Facebook, Amazon, Google, and you name it, right? Platform ecosystem, we talked about it. What are the 10 most successful digital business models and how can I use it in a traditional non-digital company? What does it mean when Mr. Rifkin is talking about zero marginal costs? What is the benefit of automation? How do I do this incentivation of innovation? How can I do a process where, regardless from where it comes, I can evaluate what innovation is good for my business and which I have to invest in? So this book is really this update that you can read chapter by chapter or one of the other chapters. And as a manager or entrepreneur, you're then back in the game and you're able to change your traditional business into a more digital appropriate business because Europe's last chance. We lost the last 20 years of digitalization to the global ones, especially to the US companies. The most valuable companies come from US, and they're all platforms, they all have the digital business models, and Europe is left behind. We only have like SAP and Spotify and stuff like this, but they're way bigger. And I say, let's work together to have our profitability, prosperity, our wealth in our society by adopting those patterns, those methods that work for them, for us in the traditional industry. So that is my mission, that is the book. It's easy, it's practical, and it's broken down to what you can do in your company as a manager.
How can we find you and how can we find the book if you want to purchase that?
It's everything on my website, it's martingiesswein.com. So you are inserting that, so it's easier, martingiesswein.com, and you can find it everything there. If it's easier, it's also my podcast show, it's podcast.mg, like Martin Giesswein, podcast.mg. It all leads to those resources, and you can sign up and read everything and hear everything there.
We will put everything into the description of this video, and it's my turn to say again, thank you so much. I appreciate very much you taking your time coming here to us to the Failure Talks and sharing these very valuable lessons, and also the fuck up of Nokia from a different perspective. Thank you so much, Martin.
Danke. Thank you very much, Dejan.